I'm sure you have heard the term toxic workplace. The one room at work where we can take that literally has got to be the staff kitchen. I'm Larry Fedoruk, and this is Later That Same Life. On each episode of my weekly podcast, a different topic, discussion, or story from our lives.
Season 14, Chapter 1.
The Staff Kitchen.
Staff kitchens are like the wild, wild west. The standard rules of society do not seem to apply. Otherwise, normally law-abiding people suddenly reject the principles of explicit and implicit social contracts needed for peaceful coexistence, and instead do whatever the hell they please. They steal other people's food out of the fridge. They abandon their own Tupperware treats until they become pungent and furry science experiments. And they don't clean up after themselves. We've all seen the most common classic sign in a staff kitchen. Notice, your mom doesn't work here. Please clean up after yourself. Never cared for that sign. Not that I don't believe you should clean up after yourself. But your mom doesn't work here. Stereotypes, gender roles. Mom was the one that always did all the cleaning. As a one-time single dad, I'd take exception to that remark. Also, are we to assume that everyone had a mom that always cleaned up after them? Never taught her children how to clean up after themselves? I don't know about you, but my mom was better than that. Your mom doesn't work here. Clean up after yourself. At this one place I worked one summer, the head of payroll's daughter got a job as an intern. She was so smug about that sign. My mom does work here, she would say. Yeah, like we expect the head of payroll to be called to the kitchen with a J-cloth and a bottle of Windex and clean up after her daughter, as if. Speaking of cleaning up at work, there is a hierarchy. Do the CEO and vice president have to clean up after themselves? Well, they rarely bring lunch to work. But do they? The good ones do, just to show the staff that they're like everybody else. Middle management, they're the worst. They usually are the ones most abusing the system, too big and important to actually grab a paper towel and wipe up. I personally have never worked at a place where the staff kitchen was not an issue, and for the very reasons I've already mentioned. Theft, smells, mess, no mom to clean it up. If we must have access to food at work, the only idea I've seen succeed is the cafeteria concept. Cafeteria, like they have in learning institutions and hospitals and movie studios. And that means someone is actually in charge of the kitchen. We had a small cafeteria when I worked at Rogers Media. It was more like a little cantina. Coffee machine, toaster, microwave, a hot plate. Remember hot plates? But most importantly, a person in charge. They made the toasted bacon sandwiches, a big pot of soup at lunch. They handed out the crackers. And again, this is key, they cleaned up afterward. We also had a small cooler for soda and juice, and a shelf with candy, chocolate, and gum. And you could run a tab. You signed for everything. Then those chits would be handed over to payroll, who automatically deducted your food expenses from your salary. That worked well, except every 2 weeks when your pay came in really low. Oh wow, man, I've been eating too much cheese at work. These days, there's probably no need for an office cafeteria. More than likely, there's probably a Tim's on the ground floor of your building. How did we come to this time in the privileged Western civilization where it's not just good enough to have a job, a workplace with proper equipment, a productive environment, and a decent wage, but also I'd like to bring leftover lasagna to my place of employment? Is there a place where I can refrigerate it and then later heat it up when I'm hungry? There had better be, or else I will be looking for work elsewhere. Yeah, I guess so. A lot of this is a first world problem. I mean, how can we expect it to go a full day with only 2 meals? We need lunch. And to save money where we can, we want to bring in lunch from home. If not the leftovers from the night before, there is an entire part of the food industry based on lunch. Therefore, it is incumbent on the employer to provide for that. You need a fridge, a microwave, a sink, a dishwasher, perhaps a lunch room in which we can enjoy our homemade fare. The staff kitchen. How did we ever normalize this concept? Well, let's start with the kitchen itself, an idea that really came into its own in the Middle Ages. 2 reasons: person's got to eat, and secondly, during those times, more and more people had homes, and at the highest point of your hut or cottage or house was a big open fire used to cook meals. The word kitchen itself is derived from the Latin coquere, meaning to cook. In the larger, more wealthy homes, the kitchen area was separated from the living spaces to keep them free of the smoke and odors of cooking. Some homes had up to 3 kitchens, depending on the type of food that was cooked there. Please do not cook mutton in the baking kitchen. Side note, when I was a kid on my grandparents' farm and many others in the area, they had something called a summer kitchen. Usually an older building on the property was equipped with a stove, and that's where you cooked, to avoid generating extra heat in the main house during the hot summer hours. My grandfather also built an outdoor stone oven for those same reasons. Did you know that the modern kitchen is credited to one person? The inventor of the modern kitchen, Lillian Gilbreth. Lillian Gilbreth, who debuted the kitchen of today at a woman's exposition in 1929. Lillian Gilbreth is also known as the First Lady of Engineering. She opened doors for women in that profession. She also had 12 children. Her and her husband, Frank, also pioneered motion study, using short films to study how people moved, efficiencies of movement, and so forth. Lillian did not do her own housework, but realized pretty early herself that being a homemaker was basically unpaid labor. And she calculated that 50% of that labor was done in the kitchen. Her kitchen of 1929 was meant to highlight the new gas-fueled appliances and modern state-of-the-art cabinetry. But really, because of her motion studies, the devil was in the design. Gilbreth put stove and counter side by side. It sounds so obvious now, but before that, kitchens were set up willy-nilly. Lillian Gilbreth put her design knowledge to work. She put food storage high and pan storage low. The refrigerator was kept a step away, and Gilbreth included a rolling cart that could be a countertop and also on casters be loaded with dirty dishes right from a table and rolled over to the sink in one job. In lab kitchens, they found that with this new design, the number of operations to perform a task like baking a cake went from 97 to 64, steps taken from 281 to 45. Designs have improved, of course, since then, but most kitchens today include features suggested by Lillian Gilbreth. There's your Larry Later podcast fun fact. Lillian Gilbreth, the inventor of the kitchen as we know it.
Beauty of design and easy accessibility are the highlights of the modern cookteria. A place for everything and everything in its place.
Since most women prefer to work from right to left, we placed the mixing center in the right leg of the U, between the refrigerator and the sink center. For sitting at work, this pull-out board at lap level gives a good working height. It permits a woman to sit comfortably in an ordinary kitchen chair while she's working at long and tedious jobs.
Now here's a neatly designed KitchenAid, a compact double boiler. With the protective water jacket, burning food is nearly impossible, as hard as the little woman may try.
In this kitchen, that has made her task of food preparation so much lighter. The housewife can share her family's enjoyment at mealtime.
So that's the kitchen at home. When did the staff kitchen become part of the modern job world? When did food and drink become part of gainful employment? According to the office food and beverage service company Crafty, it all started, as one might guess, with office coffee. Post-industrial records indicate that in Buffalo, New York in 1902, the Barcolo Manufacturing Company and the Larkin Company, it was a big soap factory, were the first to offer free coffee to company employees. And think of 1902, the industrial workplace would have been a tough spot to make a living. Low pay, long hours, poor working conditions. And at the time, hardly any unions had been formed to fight for the worker. It was said that when Larkin started handing out the free coffee, Barcolo started to offer a paid short break for their workers to drink the coffee. Thus the first ever coffee break, all meant to improve morale and therefore productivity. Shortly thereafter, workers' legislation was passed, so working conditions improved, and the bigger companies began putting in break rooms, lunch rooms, and even cafeterias. It wasn't until the mid-20th century, post-World War II, that these types of perks really caught on. Hewlett-Packard is credited with being one of the first big corporate entities to embrace these ideas. Not only coffee and coffee breaks, but break areas in lunchrooms. They added outdoor patios, recreational facilities. Some even had swimming pools. A friendly, thoughtful workplace? Sure. According to historians, Hewlett-Packard set the employee corporate tone for most of the 70s, 80s, and 90s. As snacking took over American food culture, workers began bringing their snacks to work. Employers put in snack carts and vending machines, famously in the 90s when Google was getting started. Legend has it that founder Sergey Brin insisted that no Google employee be located more than 200 feet from food at any time during the workday. Many Silicon Valley companies began to change the societal structure of the workplace, including the eats. Brin envisioned that better ideas and creativity might come out of employees sharing a meal instead of sitting alone at their desk. Google used their cafes and micro kitchens as a strategy, often placing them specifically between two different work teams in the hopes of more interaction between them. It mostly worked. Good stuff coming out of the kitchen. And think about it, at most parties, the most fun people, the best conversations are taking place in the kitchen. So did Google and Silicon Valley really change the way we approach a healthy work environment? I suppose. But Brin and his data business were just like Larkin and his soap factory 100 years earlier. They thought that this would help them get the most out of their employees. More recently, Harvard Business School did a study that showed that employees eating together does in fact increase productivity and morale. Now we live in a corporate culture that ties food to work, i.e. lunchrooms and staff kitchens. Any company with even 6 employees or more has to accommodate for workers' need for food. Then, of course, you need a separate room and a coffee machine and a microwave and a fridge and a sink and cleaning supplies. And, well, as I said, though, studies show it's all worth it. I don't know, though. For me, after food, I feel more like a nap than working. I mentioned earlier that they feed you when you work on a movie or TV set. It's called craft services. You know why it's called that? Arts and crafts. Who feeds the crafts people? Craft services. True story. I'm thinking, too, of the Old West. Any long cattle drive always had a cookie. Some guy stirring up the beans. That is another workplace that fed you. I guess the chuck wagon was the staff kitchen, and I'll bet that increased productivity. You know them cowpokes, they get awfully ornery when they're hungry. At my last job, we used to have pizza lunches every 2 to 3 weeks. Long weekends in the summer, we had a staff barbecue on the Friday in the parking lot. Easter, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, they actually catered a hot meal in the staff kitchen. I assume our general manager was thinking, well, this is what it says in the corporate handbook, feed the worker bees. Coffee itself was an issue. We eventually had one of those corporate office coffee company machines. It was free, but that's how you knew when the company was in trouble, when suddenly coffee was a quarter. Uh-oh, budget cutbacks. The first thing is, coffee is a quarter. The next thing is, you're fired. And I gotta tell you, at that job, we had one of the worst staff kitchens and work fridges I've ever seen. Again, people would just take food that wasn't theirs. This led to rude F-bomb-laced notes taped to people's lunches. Leave my effing lunch alone. This is Dave's lunch. I have 6 shrimp and 4,236 rice. Get your own effing food. And then people got into arguments because some people took exception to the severity of the language used in the note. Did you know you can actually buy lunch bags and food containers that are designed to look like there's moldy green food inside? These are made to take to work. They're made for the work fridge to disguise otherwise delicious edible food and discourage grand theft lunch. The work fridge felons. Yes, it's come to that. Plus, every Friday at my last job, 2 people in hazmat suits had to come in to clean out the fridge. The fridge then smelled clean and was actually safe to open for almost an entire afternoon. I really don't know how it got so funky again so fast. Also, people would eat a lunch and leave dirty dishes soaking in the sink for someone else to clean up. And we had a dishwasher right there next to the sink. Can't you just rinse your plate and put it in the dishwasher? And when the dishwasher got full, no one bothered starting it. Often, we'd be out of dishwasher pods because people were stealing them. And if the dishwasher was done, no one emptied it. If your pizza pop exploded in the microwave, you didn't clean it up, you just left it. So for the next 2 weeks, everything you heated up in that tasted like pizza. Delicious bran muffin with pepperoni and cheese. No one would ever clean it. Eventually, it got so disgusting they'd just buy a new one. We'd run out of knives and forks. I actually did this experiment. At the time, you could buy like 3 metal forks for $1 at the dollar store. So I'd spend $20 of my own money. I'd buy a bunch of forks, knives, and spoons. I'd put them into the rotation at work. And just a few weeks later, we'd be completely out of cutlery again. I did this like 4 times over 6 months. Then I just gave up. People were stealing the cheap dollar store cutlery, taking it home. What the? I also became this guy for a while. Well, if no one is going to clean out the sink, or wipe the counter, or start and empty the dishwasher, then I'll just do it. I'll be the one. I'll do it quietly, just so that it's done. I'll expect nothing for it, not even a thank you. That lasted about 6 months, because then I became this guy. Why am I always doing it? Let someone else do it instead. A few jobs before that, we had a system at that place. 2 staff members were in charge of the kitchen for an entire week. We'd be the moms who worked there to clean up after yourselves. We had enough staff that you'd be on KP maybe 2-3 times a year. Even then, some people just didn't do it. It was their week, but they didn't do it. So what? What were the consequences? Yeah, I had the highest sales of the year. I just got promoted to executive manager. I'm one of the most popular people at the job, but they had to fire me because I didn't scour the sink. There is no staff kitchen system that works. I'll bet you it's the same way at the Oval Office. Hey, whose funky macaroni salad is this from June? Joe, I think it's yours. There's no staff kitchen system that works that involves employees. Not in my opinion. Again, I'm not sure what happens to people between home and work. Even those of us with the best intentions, we hit that point where we go, it's not my job. And then everybody says that, and before you know it, there's mold and fungus growing everywhere. You need the cafeteria model, a dedicated employee who's just in charge of the kitchen. It would be a good entry-level job if you think about it. It's like starting in the mailroom and working your way up the corporate ladder, don't you think? So currently, and once again, I've had to take over the staff kitchen. I'm the one who makes sure there's coffee. I clean the sink, handle the dishwasher duties. I wipe down the counters, and keep up the cutlery supply. It is now the best staff kitchen I've ever been in. Did I mention I work from home?
Later That Same Life is written, voiced, and produced by Larry Fedoruk. LarryFedoruk37@gmail.com. Subscribe to Larry's podcast YouTube channel. Get automatic notifications with each new episode.